what aspects contribute most to faster development and deployment in your projects that you have seen with Ignition in your experience, of building these projects? So with that, Gopinath, I'll start with you. What have you seen from this side?
From an engineering perspective, Ignition lets us move from the custom craft to productized engineering. So at Base Automation, we have built substantial libraries of UDTs, the templates and reusable screens across our verticals, which are tire, automotive, utilities, energy, and environmental sectors. Each template kind of bundles tag structures, faceplates, alarms, and KPIs. That's our set of industrial Lego blocks, so we call. And when a new project comes in, right, so we are not starting from a blank canvas. So we assemble from proven building blocks, which are pre-built. So that completely changes the economics of rollout. Again, I would like to quote an example here. For one customer, we deliver an MES project for a US plant sitting in India in just 14 days. The reason was kind of simple. We have already built and tested the full solution on their India plant on Ignition. For the US site, we reused the same project and just remap the tags to the local PLCs and adjusted few plant-specific details. So instead of two big projects, they effectively got one platform rollout. And with Ignition 8.3 coming in with Git integration, the project configuration is now file-based and can live in Git with full version history, branching, and code review. That opens the door to DevOps practices as well. We wanted the DevOps on the OT for a very long time. And with the CI/CD style pipelines, automated deployments to test and production, and which contributes kind of to the safer and faster upgrades. And there is a culture story attached to our company about Ignition. So when we first started with partnering with Inductive Automation, our OT team was kind of very comfortable with the traditional SCADA. So they saw Ignition as the software team's work, as there is Python and JavaScript involved. And once they experienced how quickly they could build, reuse, and version projects in Ignition, the internal conversation again flipped. Now almost every time a new opportunity shows up, the first question they ask our sales guy is like, can we please use Ignition for this? Exactly, that's when you know the platform is accelerating engineering instead of constraining it. Travis, that's our view from our system integrator side.
I love that, and I might be a little biased here, but I've been leveraging Ignition to build applications for many years now, and it is just the perfect place to start in just building applications, right? And once you kind of see once you experience that, you have that feeling like, why don't we use this for everything, right? We certainly could. It becomes a matter of what should you take on, what shouldn't you take on in that way, right? We could design everything, but what makes the most sense? And I know, Frank, that's something that you look at as well, but from an engineering development standpoint. But let's give your take on this.
Yeah, sure. And when we're talking about engineering, being efficient at developing your solution, right? We always start with the unified namespace as a foundation, because establishing that UNS, a unified namespace, is critical to creating a scalable and maintainable industrial system, whether it's for an MES or a SCADA or even a standard work instruction delivery system. A UNS and its structure provides a single logical representation of assets, processes, and data, independent of that physical device structure. It really creates that model. So a UNS aligned UDT design, right? When we talk about that, we're talking about implementing Ignition UDTs that explicitly support UNS methodologies, insurance consistency across sites and facilities, lines and cells. Again, your machine type, and then your machine data. So it's not just the physical sort of SCADA data that you'd be picking up, but also the process data, that metadata that is becoming so much more important. And this allows us to create the standardized data model that then we can sort of overlay that context of where HMI design on top of it, because we know where everything is going to be landing, and we can use Ignition scripting language to sort of expose it in a dynamic way. And doing it this way, understanding what your UNS is, designing UDTs that align with that UNS, it helps decouple that data acquisition layer from the visualization. So UNS-driven design allows teams to divorce those layers, so you can have your dedicated teams, your control teams, your electricians and whatnot, working on getting the data up, while your visualization and development teams are working, knowing where the data is going to land. They can start working on screens and front-end components to those standardized UDTs and UNS layers, right? And that helps standardize, the processing that happens. So this results in a common reusable code base that'll scale naturally as your UNS grows, as you get more inputs into it, right? You just start enhancing that UDT library, and again, the visuals can understand where they're at, and they can dynamically start picking up some of the data that's being pushed up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Object-oriented design is critical in the computer science realm, but that applies really well here. If you could build those underlying resources and reusable UDTs and templates, it can help really speed up development going forward, right? And yeah, it takes some time up front, and you have to kind of think about those, but there's tremendous efficiency you get by really thinking about it in this kind of standardized way. And that kind of brings me to the next question, which is, we typically start out, at a particular line or a plant or a machine, and we're connecting to it, getting the data, getting the value out of that. Then that blossoms from there. With the licensing being unlimited, you expand to the next project, to the next line, to the next area, and then all it's across the entire site and in places you never thought it would be. Then you start thinking, how can I leverage it across multiple sites or across our entire enterprise? And so that is something that as you scale, there can be challenges, but and from your perspective, my next question for both of you is, how do you see Ignition helping organizations standardize and scale these solutions across their enterprise? And with that, I'm going to start with you, Frank.
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying it, all of us have been saying it right for a while, right? Ignition provides that platform for consistent, structured data ingestions from PLC devices, manual input, any third-party systems, right? It's basically an IT platform that can talk OT. It's all over the place. It's no secret, right? And so this standardization ensures that data is comparable across stations and lines. It's trustworthy for analytics and reporting, and reusable for your next project. So when you might be starting off with an OE system, and you can use that same data, the same principles to go out and create the SCADA or an MES, or integrate with a third-party ERP system, or any other IIoT sort of initiative you have. And as far as rule-based asset allocations, right? Ignition scripting libraries enable the creation of rule sets that can automate your asset creation allocation within the UNS. So you can actually start going through, and we've done this multiple times, right? So new assets can be instantiated and mapped quickly, reducing manual configuration, copy and paste errors, engineering commissioning time. And what we're really talking about is sort of, we've got a lot of IT departments that don't want to maybe expose the designer to a lot of people, but you do need different levels of engineers to be able to create and add and extend the system on the fly. And that's where the sort of the rule-based asset allocation comes in, because you can use Perspective to sort of go through and do all that work that's done on the designer side. If you've got your UNS established, you've got those UDT-driven, UDT-aligned, UNS-aligned UDTs, as well as that context of where HMI design philosophy, right? And it just creates a dynamic UNS UDT-driven visualization. So by binding the visualization components directly to the UNS components, you get those dynamic dashboards and screens that can be generated automatically. You don't need someone to go through and start creating these screens. And again, if you haven't been using it, use your Flex repeaters, because they are used to render asset-based information based on that UNS structure and the data that's sitting down there. It's just incredible what you can do with the UNS, with the UDTs, and a good CS programmer back there.
Yeah, I really love that, and this is I want to highlight this again here, because I think it's a really important piece that right out of the box, you don't really necessarily get or understand that could be possible. And this, you're talking about this rule-based asset allocation, this idea that, in Ignition, you could build tags, you could build UDTs, you could build screens, and you could build it, in a way that's very static. But you can also build in a way that's very dynamic, meaning that you could drive all that configuration, even build a front end, little mini application that helps you build new sites or new systems very quickly by being able to instantiate or create these things on the fly. And it's just a very powerful part of Ignition. And once you kind of see that, it really opens up this possibility of the types of applications you can do with Ignition. So I would encourage everybody from here, if you take one thing away, like look at that and see how that could really help you in terms of real true scale, not just at, within one site, but across, your entire operations there. Now, Gopinath, I know you have some important perspectives on this as well. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
I really agree with Frank on this. So engineering efficiency ideally sets you up for the real price, right? So which is the scaling and standardization. Most multi-plant manufacturers, they don't want 10 different solutions. They want like one playbook that works everywhere. With Ignition, we deliberately designed that playbook, and we've had fantastic experiences so far. We standardized the HMI layouts and the navigation structure, the OE and downtime definitions, the logbook structures, the security roles, and even project folder structures. One or two plants agree on that standard, and every new plant inherits it. So operators transferring between plants see familiar screens. Corporate teams can finally compare OE or energy without spending weeks arguing over their different definitions at different plants. Again, for leadership, this is the efficiency story, right? You invest once to get this architecture, the standards, the UX user experience right, and then you reuse that investment across every site. Ignition gives us enough flexibility to adapt locally, but again, enough discipline to keep everything within a common framework. And once you have the reusable components with a set of engineers who love Ignition, right, you can genuinely do design once and deploy many strategies. So Travis, from where we sit, Ignition is what lets you standardize once and then press copy paste across the network.
I love that. Absolutely.